Welcome to Thomas and Mary Nimmo Moran's master bedroom, which is up on the third floor of the Thomas Moran studio. We furnished this room to look very much the way it would have been when the Morans were here. Mary Nimmo Moran died in 1899, so we tend to figure the date that we're furnishing the house to is about 1895. There's an inventory of the house that was made when Thomas Moran died in 1926. And we have some reminiscences about the rooms, but we don't really know what the bed looked like. We don't know what their chest of drawers looked like. We do know they had 2 pieces of marble top furniture in here. So we've furnished this with things from the Historical Society's collection, and a lot of these things come from the summer cottages that were built in the 1880s and 90s down on Ocean Avenue. So we have a cherry bed from the 1820s. Because the Morans were into collecting. They were very interested in European things, Oriental items. They collected Oriental rugs and kimonos and costumes and Chinese paintings done on glass, and also early American furniture. So we have no problem whatsoever with having an 1825 cherry bed with a pineapple, symbol of hospitality here. We know that they were really interested in Indian textiles. They even have a piece of Indian furniture. So a lot of the shawls are paisley shawls, and this one in particular is one that was handmade in India, which is where the paisley shawl developed. Then was so popular because Queen Victoria was given one as a young woman that a factory in Paisley, Scotland started making paisley shawls. That's where the name paisley comes from. And this one is signed in Arabic on the center by whoever was the weaver. And it's a combination of really weaving and other materials. The crochet bedspread was made in the 1880s by a person from Springs. A little chest of drawers and collectibles. The library is quite interesting. We have a series of books that came from the Gurley Estate, a Gurley Estate down on Ocean Avenue, books that were mostly read by the family from the 1880s to about 1920. And the owner of the house, who loves literature, got together, gave us 30 books from the library that she felt that the Moran girls would probably have read. Here, the Morans had 3 children. And there's, some unusual Oriental rugs, of course, just in case the electricity went out. This was one of the early houses to have electricity in the village. You have a little kerosene lamp, so you can use that. Candle here, just in case. Room has a fireplace. There's only 2 fireplaces in the house, one in the master bedroom and one downstairs in the studio room. Little bookshelf is filled with ceramics and things. And several of the pieces, in fact, belonged to Mary Nimmo Moran. The little picture up on the top shelf on the right-hand side was something that she brought back from Scotland as a souvenir when she and the family went to Scotland to see where Mary Nimmo Moran was born. She was born in Scotland. Her husband was born in Bolton, England. This table belonged to a whaling captain, but it's pretty much at home here, made in the 1840s or 50s. The beautiful bay window, a lot of the details in the house were scavenged by Thomas Moran, who would go about the 17th Street and Ocean Avenue of the Americas, where his studio was. He bought the property in 1883. This house he built in 1884, and there were a lot of buildings that were considered fire hazards, even though you could still live in them, and they were being torn down and new fire-resistant buildings were built. So the windows, the fireplace mantle, all of this wall of cabinets came from buildings that were being torn down. He would scavenge the material, stack it up, and then it would be brought out by the train in the 1880s to Bridgehampton, and then it would be brought over here by wagon. So it's like a big picture puzzle in some ways, or there's a French word for assembly, an assemblage, and when you're downstairs in those rooms, there's many more things that have come from older buildings. But see the window seat, the pretty windows came from a candy and cigar shop on Lower Broadway. More lusterware pictures over there, and The lanterns, all of the lighting fixtures in the house are period, but there wasn't one original light fixture left for us to use when we started restoration in 2013. So these have all been acquired one way or another and are, typical of the period. And since he scavenged things, we assumed he didn't very often buy matching pieces. So most every single light is a little different than the other one you'll see. There are 3 guest bedrooms up on the 2nd floor, plus the master. This little room here belonged to Ruth Moran, who was the older daughter, stayed with her father as a helpmate and as a friend up until the 26th when he died, and then she ended up living in the house or coming out here in the summers until the 40s. So this was her room, and this is the only room we have on the 3rd floor of the house that we have a photograph that is of the period that the Morans lived here. So there's a picture on the wall that shows how the room was furnished, but it's pretty neat. It's got a Kalim rug on the floor, typical rocker, the calling card table over there, a piece of art pottery, and this really beautiful bay window with a window seat. There's a backgammon game going on, and this would have looked, when the Morans here, would have looked right out on a pasture. Now, if the truth be told, the Morans probably never celebrated a Christmas here, and their children were pretty much teenagers by the time they moved in 1884. But we feel that we can take liberties and we can pretend that maybe some kids did stay over the winter here. So this seems like a perfect place to have a playroom, and the Historical Society has a really rich collection of toys. You can see a racing game over here, China head dolls, wonderful early Steiff teddy bear from the 1st period. I think everybody who comes in the room falls in love with the Steiff elephant. The chairs come from the Wheelock estate. They had a lovely summer house, and they knew Mr. and Mrs. Moran. They had a house down in Georgica. Probably the only thing that is entertaining and has nothing to do with history whatsoever is the mink teddy bear. But that's a friend's teddy bear made out of, I think, her grandmother's coat, isn't it? If I remember correctly, that's the story. And little doll toys and a little steam engine that really works. And then the table over in the corner has a milk wagon, another early doll, and lots of games and just recently someone gave us the Star Authors card game box, which is pretty groovy. And probably the most interesting thing about the room is the round window, which we knew only because of an early photograph of the house, because by the time that came into the 1940s, that window got damaged and it wasn't there any longer. And there's a little hook on the bottom of the window, and there are 2 cleats that go in, so you just turn it so it lets the air in. Now we're in the bathroom on the 3rd floor. This is really the only original bathroom. We're not terribly sure. We know there was another bathroom in the servants' bedroom up above the kitchen, but this is really the only bathroom we know for sure was here, while for use of the regular family while the Morans lived here. And this is the original sink, marble sink with its cast iron brackets. Plumbing is new. We had it plumbed properly. Here's an early little soap container that belonged to one of the families down on Ocean Avenue, the same way with the toothbrush holder made in England in the 1880s. The mirrors from the 1840s, the color combinations throughout the house are not modern. They are definitely from the 1890s, and they're all devised by special color researchers. We had 2 work on this property who analyzed by both chemical and spectrographic ways to let you know what the original color was, and then to determine what the hue was, because they can tell by the chemical composition how much fading has taken place. So every surface you see in the house, someone, very carefully examined a small chipping. And you'll notice throughout the house that there's a real shine on the woodwork. And that's because it's linseed oil paint, as it would have been during the 1880s, and it was shiny and it would patine down. But we were quite surprised at this sort of blue-green that was the original color here, because it had some pretty wild 1960s wallpaper on it. And these are all the acetized shades that were popular in the 1880s or so. When you think of the Moran House, which they really never called a cottage, it was always called the studio, capital T, capital S. It was a place to work. Moran worked in his studio. Mary Nimmo Moran, an artist, also worked here because she was an etcher, and sometimes certainly many etchings were done out here. And he was very dogmatic about, getting up and having breakfast and then working and then stopping at about 2 or 3 o'clock. Some of this information comes from some reminiscences that his daughter left. So there were certainly times when, if they had visitors, or if Ruth and her mother were here, or if her sister came up to visit from Washington, and this was a combination sort of little living room, because they wouldn't be down there where he was working, and also was a place where some of the etchings could be shown. The cabinet over there probably had etchings that were unframed. We know there was always an easel there in the corner. There are hanging rails in every single room of the house. And we know that this is just about exactly the way they would hang their original etchings, and often friends' etchings as well. So we've just decided that this is a little place for people to congregate. They can have some punch, wonderful glasses and antique candlesticks, Venetian lamp. Since they had gone to Venice, brought back a gondola. We know there was a Venetian lamp here. And this large window here in the summertime can slide into the wall, so it lets the ocean breeze in, and he could open up some of the windows down below. And if it was a stifling, August day, they were often out here sometimes as much as 5 or 6 months out of the year. So this is just a sort of way, if there was a party downstairs, it would be typical in the 19th century to have the ladies congregate up here while the gentlemen, talked world affairs and smoked cigars down below. And what makes this house so spectacular from the exterior is the turret. Not a unique, by any means, feature of Queen Anne architecture during the late 19th century, but not a lot of turrets. There are more often towers out here. Turrets certainly much more sort of Elizabethan England. And that's a room that has little built-in benches, a place where you can sit, look at the garden, look out at the pond, watch the swans, and we know there were swans there in the 1880s, and possibly read a book of poems. So when you came in the front door of the house, the Morans would certainly greet you. The whole concept of this house is not so much what the outside looks like, but it's really all about the inside, opening up those double doors and then just coming into this huge open 2-story room, and realize that not a lot of private houses in the 1880s had great rooms. I mean, for us, in the 2019, great rooms are common, but not in this period, and certainly not the big windows that he employed. So you would come in, on the left-hand side is where I'm standing, and this was a room underneath the balcony that was the dining room. So this is where the family would have, as they progress, would have dinner and probably breakfast and whatever, and then get out of their dad's way or husband's way. And once again, the house had things from all different periods. So you have a, 1800 sideboard, you have all the etchings done by Thomas and Mary Nimmo Moran. Both were famous for their etchings. And then the beautiful objects that were typical of Victorian entertaining. This device here, designed just for serving chunks of cheese from a cheese wheel. This beautiful ewer for red wine, and then the white wines and the sherry in these hand-blown decanters, and the exotic Indian candelabra here, the candlesticks from England. These are standing on little bases so you could raise the height of your candle. You know, little things to put out the light, doilies. I mean, it was all a very complicated way of entertaining. And so you'd come in, you'd probably glance over for a moment at the dining room, and then you just look over and be bowed over by this 14-foot Christmas tree. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Richard.
This is
Good to
Mary
see you.
Bush. She's one of our trusty trustees. Also, she's involved in almost any project we have which is artistic. And I can say that this certainly was partially her idea. And she has been very important in all of the decorating here, but she really focused on the Christmas tree.
Thank you, Richard. And so many of our visitors have been so enthralled by this beautiful, beautiful tree, which has just been a labor of love to install and decorate. And they've looked at our ornaments, and they've just seen so many of the vintage things that we've had, and remembered that packed away in their attic, they have some of the very same things. And so we've received some very lovely, generous donations from members of the community, which we've added to our collection. This darling little lady right here is from the early 1900s, and it is probably the oldest ornament on our tree. As you see, there are a lot of empty spaces. So if you are so inclined and you have something at home that you would like to donate to the Historical Society, we're always welcome. You're always welcome to bring donations to the Osborne Jackson House.
To make this a more exciting experience and to sort of humanize a space that was normally a workspace, we brought in a lot of antiques and mannequins with clothes of the 1880-90 period, most of them worn by people from East Hampton. And of course decided to show off what I think is an amazing collection of antique toys. So you have a French horse here, you have a wonderful little doll chest, which is all made out of cigar boxes, and on the back it says for Katie, 1902. We don't know who made it for Katie. A sleigh, more rabbits and early dolls. I mean, that cute little wicker chair over there is in reality a little kid's potty chair, not probably the most exciting thing to get as a Christmas gift. The train is heavy metal, it's a Buddy L, and you would burn coal in that, and that train would really work. The trunk over there is a doll trunk, and it's filled with about 14 complete trousseaus. It's a complete trousseau for a French doll from the 1880s, and the doll's name was Lady Blue, Dolly Blue, because one of the dresses is blue. And then up on the wall we have pictures and prints and a lovely painting of one of the Moran girls, and a wonderful pond boat over here. And most fun, and he'll get a detail so you can look at it closely, is the Steiff little dog over here, and the wonderful little dog carrier, the wicker dog carrier from about 1900. Well, we are delighted that LTV is one of the great documenters of the history of modern-day East Hampton, and the series of documentaries and videos that they do, just keep the past always alive. And we're so happy because this is the first year that we have Historical Society, East Hampton Historical Society, has been involved with this building. And we just thought it would be great fun to do a Christmas presentation. And we are honored that LTV decided that they would come and film it. And, you know, I'll just say in closing that the atmosphere, the flavor, the feeling, every year we will certainly have this place open during December. We're hoping to add more programming, some singing, some readings, maybe a couple little Christmas plays, and we hope to be more involved with Home Sweet Home and some of the other houses which are decorated for Christmas, so we can celebrate a Victorian Christmas every year in December in beautiful downtown East Hampton.